The topic for this module is language and literacy in early childhood education. Language includes listening, speaking, reading, and writing, while literacy is reading and writing. Oral language is the foundation for reading and writing. This means that we must give children a lot of opportunities to learn to listen and speak before we expect them to read and write. Oral language activities can include a number of things at circle time, such as shared reading, but also it can include having discussions with the teacher one-on-one or in small groups throughout the day. Some great ways to encourage language acquisition of young children is just talking and singing with them, reading and playing. When my daughter was an infant, I remember being home with her on maternity leave, and it was just her and I home for most of the day. So I would just talk to her about whatever was happening. I would say, "Oh, it looks like you're wet. It's time for a diaper change." And I would look outside and say, "Oh, the mail truck is here. Our mail is coming." And I would just talk to her throughout the day. The early learning standards are provided for you in the earlier module on curriculum, but the link is listed here as well. And the early learning standards just tell what children should be able to do at different ages in the area of language and literacy specifically, but also in the other domains as well. So you can search by domain and by age group when you go to that link for the Florida Early Learning Standards. In the curriculum module, there's also a link for the CPALMS, which is the K-12 standards for all the different curriculum areas. This is a picture of one of the pages from the early learning standards. So I searched for language and literacy development for 3 to 4-year-olds, which is 36 to 48 months. And you can see here, there's lots of different areas within language and literacy. Listening and understanding is the first one. So you'll see that it's expected for 3 to 4-year-olds to begin to engage in back and forth conversations with adults. So this was one of the skills I was looking for when I was observing my preschool children years ago with our curriculum. That was one of the objectives that we were looking for. This is the Florida Early Learning Standards, but that is a standard that is probably in a lot of other state standards as well. That's an important skill for children to learn. And then we want them to be able to tell the main idea of a topic or a conversation. So one assessment I used to do with my preschoolers would be to read a very short story. I think it was like 1 or 2 paragraphs long, and then ask the child to retell it. It was a very interesting assessment to complete with my preschoolers because without pictures, it was very difficult for some of them to listen and to actually comprehend what was being read. You'll see that following directions is there too. And on my next slide here, I do make the point that we expect children to listen a lot, and it is important for them to listen and comprehend, but we also need to give them lots of opportunities to speak as well. So they need to be able to speak to adults and other children, and we don't want them to have to wait for long periods of time to have a turn to speak. So the best way to do that again is that open-ended playtime, that child-initiated, child-directed playtime, where they have that chance to talk and listen to each other. An example of waiting an inappropriate amount of time, everybody loves show and tell, but if you have a class of 20 children and each child gets to talk for, a minute, then the last child who gets a turn to speak is going to have to wait a really long time in order to share about his show and tell. And of course they enjoy sharing, but that's way too long to expect that child to wait and listen to others before they get to share their own. So one idea for that is to split the class into 2 groups. If you have another adult or a paraprofessional who can lead the other small group, or again, just limiting that time, those times when everyone gets to share in the large group, because it just does take a really long time. Some teachers do have where different children get to share each day, so not the whole class, but certain children. Maybe you have each child be a star of the week and they get a chance to talk about themselves without having to hear from the whole class in one day. Now, the title of this slide is Literacy-Rich and Print-Rich Environments. This is another great way to help foster children's language development. We talk a lot about print-rich environments with preschool and older children. So that is lots of writing on the walls, such as different song charts, the alphabet, things like that, different types of books in the classroom library, as well as other centers throughout the classroom. But the literacy-rich environment, again, that includes the reading and writing, but we want a language-rich environment too, where adults are talking to and with children throughout the day. And I know with large class sizes, that's a difficult thing to do. One strategy would be in a classroom, again, the ratios I had when I taught preschool was we had 18 children and 2 adults. So one way you can do that is to just have a list of, okay, this teacher will check in with these children throughout the day, and this teacher will check in with these children, and then to rotate that so that if you don't speak to every child each day, at least every couple of days, you should be having an individual conversation with that child. And of course, those conversations should be about things that interest that particular child.